Hello, hello. Good afternoon, good morning. I'm Ardis Kadiu, founder and CEO of Element451, and this is In Your Element with Ardis and Erin. Hi, Erin.
Hey, Ardis, how you doing?
Doing great. I'm doing
Good,
great.
good.
It is Wednesday, but it seems that this Wednesday has been so packed with activity already.
Yeah, it's by Wednesday, I usually feel like it's Friday. I think that's the new kind of cadence of just work and life. I don't know.
Yeah, we are experiencing the pre-holiday
Mhm.
compaction of work. So where they say what they say, if you still had 4 days of work, will you get the same amount done? And the answer seems to be always yes. But today we'll talk about colleges and universities and the news that's happening out there. I know that you're going to share your screen and have some stuff up for us, and then we'll kind of kick off the conversation. So a few interesting things, a few uplifting things, and then obviously um, one of the things that's been circling around in the higher education kind of news ecosphere has been the National Clearinghouse data reports that were released. I believe it was last week or the week before, a couple of weeks
A
ago.
couple weeks ago.
We didn't get a chance to cover this much, but everybody has been talking about it. Even mainstream media has been talking about it. And we picked, obviously, Inside Higher Ed as one of the higher ed newspapers or news outlets. But essentially, enrollment is still falling. 2 years, 2 years, and we're still, I think the number was about 1 million students stopped going to college from 2019. So the number is 1 million less students going to college from 2019 to 2021, which is a staggering number when you think about it. And in terms of percentages, I guess it was around 3% last year, and the number was about 2% this year. So, Erin, what do you think?
It's grim. It's grim. I'm gonna say that flat out. In particular, so you have the larger stats, but when you dig deeper at the schools and the students who are making up that 1 million figure, are the schools are ones that are not the prestigious ones. It's not your Harvards. It's not your even, kind of below that, the well-known name schools. They're doing all right. In fact, some of them are doing really well and their enrollment has actually increased. But it's the less well-known schools, the less prestigious ones, the ones who might have been underfunded already, who are really seeing the brunt of these trends, and students as well. So Black students, Latinx students, community college students, which traditionally tend to be a more diverse population, income levels lower. And so that's very troubling because, as the article mentions, it's hard to go back to school, to college, after you've gone back into the workforce. So when you look at kind of what the ramifications of this few years down the line, we're feeling the pain now, but it'll be a different sort of pain kind of collectively in a few years. Those are kind of things that stand out to me. And I know we have a school, one of our clients, Bloomfield, who is kind of representative of a lot of these trends. And I thought, you've been working with them for a number of years. Maybe you could tell a little bit about their story.
Yeah, Bloomfield College is in New Jersey, and they are one of the only schools who has a PBI, primarily black. Uh, is it black? Primarily Black and Hispanic institutions. So they are one of the only schools in the state to have that, and then most of their student populations are Black and Hispanic and underrepresented and first generation, of course. So they were hit the hardest by the pandemic. So one of the things that we saw, obviously, was you had a kind of a 1-2 punch, right? So you had minorities being hit the hardest by the pandemic. And we also had the funding and technology schools that didn't have had invested tremendously in technology being hit the hardest. So they had a greater operational push to go online. So if you combine both of those, now it's a double whammy, right? And what's happening with Bloomfield is that they are trying to get ahead of it. There's been many of schools which have kind of waited and kept the financial hardship private. But in this case, the decision was by the president to actually open it up and seek publicly philanthropic or perhaps even other types of investments or institutions or companies that will come to the rescue and kind of partner with them on that stage. So basically, she has made it more of a bigger kind of discourse, has opened the discourse, which is risky at the same time, because now on the student side, students are questioning, it's like, is the school going to be open for us, and why would I apply there? But yet on the other side, it's like, well, if you kept it hidden, then the school might not be there next year. It's just that the students don't know about it, right? So it's kind of a double-edged sword. We'll see how things are evolving and how things are going, but it certainly opens it up. There's a lot of I guess philanthropic money out there, and one of the stories that we'll probably talk about a little bit more is I think the Mackenzie Scott, the foundation, and kind of the impact that she's made on targeted donations to different schools. So Prairie View A&M, one of the HBCU schools in Houston, Texas, I actually went there into 2019 to pitch them, and so I was on campus in 2019. Really, really nice campus. The stadium is pretty large. So as I was talking to them back then, one of the things that kind of resonated was there's certainly a lack of, well, I won't say just for this school, but you can see the setup and the technological kind of adaptation of these institutions, right? We can see that they're lagging behind a little bit in terms of the going online or having some of the recruiting kind of components and CRMs. So as schools are moving online, that's becoming harder. But in this case, it's had a tremendous impact, that donation. So what are your thoughts, Erin?
I mean, it's great to see now where the story is following up and seeing what this money can do. And one of the items that in addition to opening up social justice centers, and there's the Toni Morrison writing program, also a lot of the money is going towards their endowment. And one of the reasons why these elite institutions have kind of done better after the pandemic is they had that cushion. And so I think that, we're thinking longer term. Yes, we need to invest in technology, but these schools also need to have similar cushions as some of those more well-known, more historically well-funded institutions. So really taking kind of a bigger, broader view. And it's really encouraging to see that they're kind of taking a dual approach. They're going to, invest in things that are important right now and also have that money. In particular, the story is really great. It has as great articles do, kind of pinpoints one student's story, and they mention how he was texting his mom, "I need $2,000 to finish out my semester," and he looked at his account and the money was there. And then there's this text exchange between him and his mom, and they're both like, "Oh my God, thank God." And it was like $2,000, which that's a varying amount of money to different people in America. And some people fortunately they can, get that. Some people, that's really a lot of
Yeah.
money. For most
Yes.
people, it is.
Yes.
Most people, $400 is not readily available. So to just see that in the account because of this big donation and seeing how it's affecting individual students is really powerful and encouraging. And I think for all of our mental health, good to balance out the enrollment stories of all of this clients.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. From our partners, we're seeing something very similar as well, depending on the makeup, depending on the makeup of that school as well. So
Yeah. Yeah. I was wondering, this thought came to me while we were talking about this artist. So technology as a consumer, things seem less expensive to me.
mhm.
Like when I think, look at a television. I bought my first flat screen TV, was like $1,000. Now you can probably buy it for like $50. Like prices of things start to go down traditionally. Why
Yes.
is technology at universities still so expensive, or what is happening there that it's just not matching up with what we see? It's not just consumer products, it's like any kind of like Square. You used to have to hire a developer to build out a website. Now you go on, most of the tools are there. You have a basic kind of understanding of design and content, and you can have a website and build a business.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, that's actually a really great question because I have a lot of thoughts on that.
I
And,
thought
and
I
one,
thought you might, so I brought it up.
um, one of the things that technology procurement in institutions and in higher education has been one of the areas where we need to kind of revamp that quite a bit, right? It should not take 9 months to acquire a piece of technology, or classroom technology, or marketing technology, or whatever it is, and kind of there's a lot of barriers that have been put in place by the procurement, and kind of how that goes about it, with the RFP and the bidding process, and things takes a long time. But that's one part of it. The other part is, there's not a lot of innovation because nobody really wants to come in and say, okay, higher education, great. We have a lot of innovative startups coming on board. We have a lot of innovative technology, and everybody's going into higher education. Because of these really long, sales cycles, and really um, crazy hoops that you have to jump through in order to deliver that technology. So the cost of that technology, there's basically a lot of consolidation, and there's a lot of these really big players in the area, and they're what's called enterprisey type software. So when you're doing that, obviously the cost goes tremendously higher, and because there's not a lot of expertise, what ends up happening is that the technology is one piece of the cost, but then the implementation and also the maintenance, that's a huge part of it. So if you want to make a quick change like the pandemic, we saw from a lot of our partners and kind of technologies that, well, we were able to push things through a lot faster in terms of deals and kind of working with schools and bringing that. Well, why was that? Why was the pandemic, like, why was it okay to do it in the pandemic, but not okay before or going forward, right? It's like, why can't we just get those approvals, or why can't we just inject that? And that's exactly the problem here, is that, you know, it's more of a mentality. It's like, here, we've done things here a certain way, and then now we need to get forward. But then again, to, cost doesn't go down unless there is innovation, there's new
Right.
players, and there's competition, right? But we're seeing a lot of great players coming on board, but it's just because of the cost of implementing something and kind of adding it, it just becomes really, really hard to bring that cost down, because you need better, more mature players to come on board, and kind of vendors to essentially fill that need. So of course that gets passed down, right? It's like, you can ask a school, it's like, well, why don't you communicate? Why don't you get Grammarly, for example, like as a plugin? It's like, well, we can't get that because we have to go through our procurement office and IT and all this. It's like, like it's a spell check. It's like, what do you mean? Like, it's free. You can just install it in your browser and you can have, but that's not set up that way. So now take that and bring it to classroom technology and bring it to the other things, and it's like the cost becomes, tremendously higher. Of course, it's come down, right? It's come down.
Yes.
I remember when I went to school, like I had to get an IBM laptop, and it was actually part of my tuition, and we had to pay monthly for it because it cost, I don't know, like $4,000 or something ridiculous like that. So, and that was it, right? You had a whole, division of the team, like the IT services, was the laptop support desk, right? And that's all they did. But now with everybody being on devices and so on and so forth, that's advancing. But we still have a lot of work to do there, and the work is not necessarily on the how do we bring costs down, but it's more like how do we change processes and how do we make sure that we're being agile, right? This idea of agile comes up over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of gets to a topic that we talk about a lot, is disruption in higher ed. And there's just to kind of close out for today, there was a report out that community colleges offering bachelor's degrees is gaining some traction. And I think it mentions there's only like 27 states that even 24 that even allow community colleges to offer four-year degrees, and some of the thinking around that at the government level, this report mentions, is they want to protect the four-year institutions, from not having that competition. But if that starts to change, some of the places where four-year degrees are allowed to be offered are ones where there's a labor shortage in a particular skill set. So nursing, for example, some community colleges are able to offer four-year degrees in nursing. Well, if that expands, what does that mean for the four-year institutions who have increased competition on top of the increased competition and other pressures with the pandemic? And then community colleges, how do they take advantage of that opportunity? So a lot of themes that we talk about a lot. Just wanted to kind of get your take.
Yeah, I mean, look, we know that cost is a huge issue with education right now. We are in a hole. The student debt just keeps on going and going, and we know, like, that's exactly the reason you mentioned $2,000. And how do you pay for that? Well, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, or if your parents are living paycheck to paycheck and kind of relying on that funding, like, even if something small is disrupted in that part of your life, then it becomes really, really hard to get back into it, or to kind of continue that four-year institution or whatever. So essentially what we're seeing here is community colleges are recruiting for 50 miles radius or 100 miles, like some of them, depending on what the areas are, and they're very local. So we have public institutions, four-year public institutions, right? And those were the answer to, okay, you go start community colleges, you can move on to the 4 years. But as we know, with state funding being shrunk down for those four-year publics, they've had to start recruiting outside of state. They have to start recruiting, more wider. And essentially, they're inching up their tuition, they're inching up a lot of the fees, and they're kind of the cost structures for those institutions that become much more complex as well. And of course, it's being put down on the student now. So what's happening is that now community colleges looks very, very attractive, because that cost of the 4 year has also gone up, and the makeup is very different, and the way that they're recruiting, like they're bringing that cost into the student cost. So it's kind of the way that this will there's also a third component to this, and the third component is that there is a industry that is springing up now where they don't consider themselves community colleges or institutions or anything like that, but it's a non-traditional institutions or non-traditional degree granting schools. So if you think about, companies like, I'm not sure, Erin, are you familiar with Outlier?
No, just the book.
So I think Outlier is so it's a new company, and essentially what they're doing is they're offering this core. Basically, they have really sophisticated, introductory courses being offered. You jump on the service, and it's a full course, and you can get credits, through a accredited institution. But these are introductory courses, and now you can use those credits for other institutions as well. So you can, because they're delivering amazing content, think about masterclass, but now for algebra or for something very similar, you're able to in a very cost-effective way gain 5, 10, 20 credits, however many of those introductory credits, or even supplement it. And it's all virtual, it's all online, and kind of all, and the accreditation is through a regular institution. So the only thing that's missing for non-traditional or the business model of education is this accreditation component. Right. That becomes the central component. It's like, well, is it accredited? Right. And we feel like accreditation is, of course, with consumer protection and all of that, it's like, we don't want anybody to open up a school because we want oversight, and we want to make sure that you're getting what you're paying for.
Right.
But it's become an area where there's not a lot of innovation happening because, you need to be affiliated with their accredited, so you can get credits in order to transfer them or to get a degree, or so it's an interesting, environment, and we're going to be seeing a lot of innovation happening here, and it's all going to be driven by moving online, technology, kind of this need for a different delivery method, and bringing that cost of education down tremendously. But guess what? The students and the demand is still going to be there. The demand is there. It's just that there's barriers right now for that demand. Yeah. So, absolutely. Billions of people are going to need education worldwide, and that number is increasing daily. So we just need to figure out how to deliver that education in a more cost-effective, hybrid, where students are, how they want it.
Yep. Student focused, and
it's all about the learner-centric, student-centric. Absolutely. We use those words all the time. So
yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well,
I think this was a nice rundown of what's going on. Next week on Monday, Ardis will be delivering his masterclass on algebra. So you want to make sure to tune into that. Mm-hmm. And I will probably fail within 10 minutes. So I'm going to take it pass fail is what I'm going to do.
Pass fail, yeah,
maybe,
exactly.
Maybe that'll give me better odds. So, all right. Thanks, Ardis. Good to hear your thoughts on these things.
Thanks, everybody.
See y'all.